Predators on Patrol. Chapter 1. The Last Beat. My name is Daniel Kelly, and I never thought I'd live long enough to see the badge become obsolete. 30 years ago, I wore it like a second skin. Now it's a relic in a glass case, collecting dust while the streets are patrolled by creatures bred for dominance. Alien apex predators. The government's answer to a society that stopped listening to its own laws. They're not all monsters. That's the part people get wrong. Some of them take pride in the work, the way I once did. I've seen Apex officers pause to help an elderly woman cross the street, their massive frames hunched awkwardly but careful, deliberate. I've watched them stand guard outside schools, their golden eyes scanning for trouble, and the kids wave at them like they're superheroes. Sure, they look terrifying. Reptilian features, towering height, voices that rumble like distant thunder. But not every patrol is about intimidation. Some of these predators genuinely like their job. They enforce the law with precision, yes, but also with a strange kind of dignity. And the strangest part, people obey them, not out of fear alone, but out of respect. I sit on my porch most evenings, watching them glide down the street in pairs. Their movements are efficient, almost graceful. No wasted steps, no wasted words. They don't smile, but they don't need to. Order follows them like a shadow. I tell myself I'm glad to be out of it. But every time I see one of them nod to a shopkeeper or pause to watch a child safely cross a street, I wonder, maybe they're not just predators. Maybe they're something closer to what we used to be, guardians in their own way. Chapter 2. The Protest Years. Back in the 2020s, protests weren't just about injustice anymore. They became a reflex, a kind of cultural muscle memory. A cop could issue a jaywalking ticket and suddenly find themselves surrounded by a crowd chanting slogans, filming every move, daring you to slip up. I remember chasing a teenager who'd stolen a bike. He fought me like I was dragging him to the gallows. His friends filmed the whole thing, shouting that I was abusing him. The footage went viral, stripped of context, and overnight I was branded a jackbooted thug. That was the turning point. Society didn't see us as guardians anymore. We were predators in their eyes. The protests grew louder, more frequent. Even the most basic laws, traffic signals, noise ordinances, curfews, became battlegrounds. People fled from police for no reason, and when they were caught, they fought back like their lives depended on it. It wasn't about guilt or innocence. It was about defiance. The government panicked. They needed a solution that couldn't be argued with, couldn't be spun into hashtags or headlines. That's when the Apex program was born. The first patrols were met with silence. No chants, no slogans. Just wide eyes and still bodies. People didn't run anymore. They froze. They obeyed. But here's the thing. Not everyone hated it. Some citizens welcomed the change. Shopkeepers said their businesses were safer. Parents said their kids could walk home without fear. Even I had to admit, crime dropped overnight. The Apex weren't human, and maybe that was the point. They couldn't be accused of bias, couldn't be swayed by politics or public opinion. They enforced the law with a precision that was almost comforting. Looking back, I can see why people accepted them. After years of chaos, the predators brought calm. And for a while, calm felt like justice. Chapter 3. Testing the Limits. The first months after the Apex arrived were quiet. Creepy quiet. Streets that once echoed with chants and sirens now hummed with orderly silence. People obeyed, but you could feel the tension under the surface, like a city holding its breath. It didn't take long for curiosity to crawl in. Humans are stubborn creatures. We test fences, poke at rules, see how far we can go before something snaps. I remember watching a group of teenagers on Main Street. They tossed a ball back and forth, deliberately letting it bounce into the path of an apex patrol. The predator stopped, towering over them, eyes glowing faintly. The kids froze, waiting for punishment. Instead, the apex bent down, picked up the ball with claws, careful not to puncture it, and handed it back. No words, just a nod. The kids laughed nervously, but you could see the relief in their faces. Others weren't so lucky. A man tried jaywalking across Fifth Avenue, smirking as if daring the patrol to react. The apex officer didn't roar or lash out. He simply blocked the man's path, standing motionless until the man retreated to the sidewalk. No ticket, no violence, just an immovable wall of authority. Then there were the bold ones, protest veterans, agitators who missed the adrenaline. They staged small acts of defiance, shouting slogans, waving banners, refusing to disperse. The apex didn't attack them. They stood in formation, silent and unyielding, until the crowd dissolved on its own. It was eerie. No batons, no tear gas, just presence. People began to realize the predators weren't mindless enforcers. They had thresholds. They tolerated minor mischief, ignored harmless noise, even showed flashes of patience. But when someone crossed the line, theft, assault, vandalism, the response was swift and absolute. No hesitation, no negotiation. I watched society recalibrate itself in real time. Citizens learned the boundaries, like animals testing an electric fence. Some apex officers even seemed to enjoy the game, their golden eyes flickering with amusement when kids dared to push them. Others were stricter, less forgiving, their patrols marked by rigid silence. It struck me then. The predators weren't just enforcing laws. They were teaching us how to live within them again, and for the first time in years the city felt balanced, not free, not fearful, something in between. Chapter 4. Retirement. I was forced out in 2027. Mandatory transition, they called it. No ceremony, no farewell party, just a letter and a pension check. Humans weren't fit for the job anymore, they said. I packed up my locker, handed in my gun, and walked out of the precinct for the last time. Retirement was supposed to be peace. I moved to a coastal town where the air smelled of salt and the gulls cried overhead. I bought a small house with a porch that faced the street, and I told myself I'd spend my days fishing, reading, and forgetting. But forgetting isn't easy when the patrols glide past every evening. The apex officers here are different from the ones I knew in the city. They walk slower, less rigid, almost casual. One of them, a tall, slate-skinned figure with eyes like burnished copper, always pauses at the corner bakery. He doesn't buy anything, doesn't speak, just nods to the baker as if acknowledging the day's work. The baker nods back, and there's something almost human in the exchange. Another patrol officer, smaller and leaner, has a habit of stopping to watch the children play in the park. He never interferes, never scolds, just stands at the edge of the grass, arms folded, as if guarding their laughter. Parents glance at him nervously at first, but over time they've grown used to his presence. Some even wave. I sit on my porch and watch these moments unfold. It's strange. The predators don't smile, don't joke, don't chat the way we used to on patrol. But they're not cruel either. They're steady, reliable. And yet, I can't shake the feeling of distance. They're guardians, yes, but not neighbors. They don't belong to the community. They hover above it like hawks circling a field. People respect them, even trust them, but no one invites them in for coffee. Sometimes I wonder if that's the trade we made. Safety without connection, order without camaraderie. I sip my coffee, watch the patrols pass, and remind myself I'm glad to be out of it. But deep down, I miss the beat. I miss the chatter on the radio, the banter with my partner, Benny Rogers. The sense that we were part of the same fabric as the people we protected. The predators do their job well. Some even seem to like it. But they'll never know what it felt like to be human in uniform, walking the same streets as your neighbors, carrying both their trust and their suspicion in equal measure. Chapter 5. In the Shadows of Justice. It was just past midnight when I saw it happen. The street was quiet, the kind of silence that coastal towns wear like a blanket. I was sitting on my porch, nursing a cup of coffee gone cold, when the patrol cruiser rolled up. Two Apex officers stepped out, their silhouettes cutting sharp lines against the street lights. They moved with the same deliberate grace I'd come to recognize. No wasted motion, no hesitation. A man was pulled from his car, no shouting, no struggle. He looked confused more than anything, his hands raised in a gesture that was half surrender, half plea. The predators didn't strike him, didn't roar or threaten. They simply guided him toward the cruiser with a firm, unyielding grip. I leaned forward, waiting for the explanation. Back in my day, we'd announce charges, read rights, log the arrest. But here there was nothing. No words exchanged, no paperwork, no witnesses except me. The man disappeared into the black armored vehicle, and the doors sealed shut with a hiss. The cruiser sat there for a moment, humming with that low-frequency vibration I'd grown used to. Then it rolled away, leaving the street as empty as it had been before. I asked around the next morning. No one knew what had happened to the man. Some shrugged, others avoided the question. A few even said, if the Apex took him, he must have done something. That's the part that unsettled me most. People didn't demand answers anymore. They trusted the predators implicitly, even when justice unfolded in shadows. And yet, I couldn't deny what I'd seen in the officers' movements. There was no malice, no cruelty. They weren't punishing him. They were executing a duty, precise and practiced. One of them even glanced at the man with something I could only describe as patience, as if silently urging him to cooperate. Still, the silence lingered. No charges, no trial, no record. Just removal. I sat on my porch that night, staring at the empty street, and wondered, had justice become invisible, or had it simply changed shape, slipping into shadows where only the predators could see it? Chapter 6. Old Partners. I hadn't seen Benny Rogers in years. He was one of the few who made retirement feel less lonely, a partner who knew the weight of the badge, the rhythm of the beat, the smell of adrenaline when a call came in hot. We met at a diner off the highway, the kind of place where the coffee is always burnt and the booths are patched with duct tape. Benny looked older than I remembered, his hair gone silver, his shoulders slumped like he'd been carrying something heavier than time. "Danny," he said, sliding into the booth. "You still watching the patrols?" "Every night," I admitted. "Hard to stop." "Old habits." He nodded, stirring his coffee without drinking it. "They're not cops, Danny. Not the way we were. They're wardens. We're livestock now." I frowned. That's a hell of a way to put it. I've seen them do good work. Keep kids safe. Keep the streets calm. Some of them even seem to like the job. Benny leaned forward, his voice low. "Sure, they keep order. But order isn't justice. You saw what happened to Miller last month?" I shook my head. Parking fines, missed a payment. Patrol picked him up, gone before sunrise, no trial, no record. Just gone. I wanted to argue, but the memory of the man taken from his car still lingered in my mind. No charges, no explanation. Just removal. Benny sighed. We used to be accountable. We had reports, oversight, body cams, courts. Now, it's shadows. People don't even ask questions anymore. They just assume the predators are always right. I stared at my coffee, the bitter taste rising in my throat. Maybe that's the point. People trust them because they don't bend, don't break. No bias, no politics, just enforcement. Enforcement without humanity, Benny shot back. That's not trust, that's conditioning. We sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the diner filling the gap. Outside, an Apex cruiser rolled past, its low vibration rattling the windows. The waitress didn't even glance at it. Benny finally spoke. I miss the job, Danny. Not the fights, not the protests. The connection. Knowing the people we served, even when they hated us. The predators will never know that. And without it, justice is just a shadow. I didn't answer, because deep down I wasn't sure if he was wrong. Chapter 7. The Predator's Eyes. It happened on a quiet evening, the kind where the streetlights hum louder than the traffic. I was sitting on my porch, reminiscing, badge in its glass case beside me, when an Apex patrol slowed to a stop in front of my house. The officer was massive, slate-gray scales, shoulders broad enough to block the glow of the street lamp. His eyes burned with that molten gold I'd seen 100 times before, but this time they didn't feel like a furnace. They felt searching. He approached with deliberate steps, claws clicking softly against the pavement. I braced myself, unsure if I'd crossed some invisible line. But instead of confrontation, he stopped at the edge of my porch and stood still, posture straight, gaze fixed on me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, in a voice that rumbled low but carried a strange clarity, he said, "Officer Kelly." The title hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't heard it in years. Not from a human, not from anyone. I nodded, unsure what else to do. "Retired," I managed. The predator tilted his head, a gesture that almost resembled respect. His eyes softened. Not human softness, but something close. He tapped the insignia on his chest, a symbol of their patrol unit, and then gestured toward my badge case. It wasn't a smile, but it was acknowledgement. Recognition. "You kept order," he said. "We continue your mission." The words were simple, but they carried weight. He wasn't mocking me, wasn't dismissing me. He was honoring the continuity, the line from human officers to Apex Guardians. I felt a strange warmth in my chest. For all the unease, all the shadows of justice I'd witnessed, here was proof that at least some of them understood. They weren't just predators enforcing dominance. They respected the ones who came before. The officer gave a final nod, then turned and rejoined his partner in the cruiser. As the vehicle rolled away, the hum faded into the night, leaving me alone with my thoughts. For the first time in years, I didn't feel obsolete. I felt remembered. Chapter 8. The Disappearance. It started small. A neighbor's porch light left on, a car parked crooked in the driveway, then suddenly the house was empty. No moving trucks, no goodbyes. Just silence. At first, people whispered about relocation, families leaving for better jobs, new towns, fresh starts. But the pattern was too neat. Every disappearance followed a minor infraction, a late tax payment, a noise complaint, a forgotten parking fine. I began keeping notes the way I used to on patrol. Dates, times, names. The list grew longer than I wanted to admit. One evening, I saw it happen. A patrol stopped outside Mrs. Callahan's place. She was a widow, kind woman, always left cookies on her porch for the kids. Her only mistake was forgetting to renew her vehicle registration. Two Apex officers approached. They weren't cruel. One even bowed his head slightly when she opened the door, as if acknowledging her age, her dignity. They spoke in low tones I couldn't understand, guttural syllables that carried a strange calm. She nodded, trembling, and stepped into the cruiser. The officer who had bowed lingered for a moment. His golden eyes swept the street, and when they landed on me, he gave a subtle gesture, a hand pressed to his chest, then lowered. Respect. Recognition. And then they were gone. The next morning, her house was empty. No record, no explanation, just another name on my list. I couldn't decide what unsettled me more, the disappearances themselves or the way the predators carried them out. They weren't violent, weren't malicious. Some even seemed regretful, as if bound by duty they didn't entirely relish. It left me wondering, were these removals justice or maintenance? Were the predators enforcing laws or pruning society like gardeners trimming a hedge? In the shadows of justice, the line blurred, and I was left staring at an empty street, wondering if respect from a predator meant anything when your neighbors kept vanishing. Chapter 9. The Underground. Benny wasn't the only one who still carried the weight of the badge. Word spread quietly, passed in coded phrases over coffee counters and whispered in hardware stores. Retired officers, detectives, even dispatchers. All of us had seen too much to simply fade into the background. We didn't have a name yet. Not a resistance, not a rebellion, just a circle of witnesses. Our mission wasn't to fight the predators. That would be suicide. It was to remember, to record, to keep the truth alive in case the shadows grew too deep. The first meeting was in the basement of an old VFW hall. The air smelled of dust and mildew, the walls lined with faded photographs of men who had fought wars long before ours. A dozen of us sat in folding chairs, the hum of an Apex patrol cruiser faint outside. Benny opened the meeting. "We're not here to overthrow them," he said. "We're here to document, to make sure history doesn't vanish along with our neighbors." A woman named Ellis, once a detective in the city, spoke next. "I've tracked 6 disappearances in my neighborhood. No charges, no records, just gone. If we don't write this down, it'll be like they never existed." I added my own notes to the pile, dates, times, names. The list was growing, a ledger of absence, but not everyone agreed on the tone. A younger officer, barely retired, leaned forward. "Maybe they're doing what we couldn't. Maybe this is justice in a purer form. No courts, no appeals, no loopholes. Just law." The room bristled. Benny shook his head. "Justice without transparency isn't justice. It's domination." Silence followed, heavy and uneasy. We weren't united in belief, only in purpose. Some saw the predators as guardians, others as wardens. But all of us knew the disappearances couldn't be ignored. We began to organize. Each member would track their neighborhood, record patrol patterns, note who vanished and when. We'd meet monthly, compare notes, build a map of the shadows. As I left that night, I caught sight of an Apex officer standing at the end of the block. He wasn't watching us directly, but his golden eyes flickered in the glow of the street lamp. For a moment, I wondered if he knew, if he understood that we weren't enemies, just chroniclers. He didn't move. He didn't interfere. He simply stood there, silent, as if granting us permission to continue. And that was the strangest part. In the underground, even the predators seemed to know we existed, and some, I suspected, respected us for it. Chapter 10. The Shades of Blue. The name came one night in the basement of the VFW hall. We were sitting in a circle, our notebooks stacked like evidence files, when Ellis leaned back in her chair and said, "We're ghosts, you know, walking shadows of what we used to be." Benny chuckled, though there wasn't much humor in it. "Ghosts with pens instead of badges." That's when I said it. Shades of blue. The room went quiet. The words hung there, heavy but fitting. We weren't officers anymore, not in the eyes of the law. But we carried the memory of the uniform, the weight of the beat, the duty that had defined us. And like shades, the old word for spirits, we lingered unseen but not gone. From that night on, we were the Shades of Blue. We took the name seriously. Our meetings became more structured, our records more meticulous. Each disappearance was logged with precision: time, place, patrol unit, circumstances. We weren't just witnesses anymore. We were archivists of a vanishing world. Some of us wore old pins or patches tucked inside jackets, not as rebellion, but as remembrance. Others carried their notebooks like shields. Benny even started calling roll at the beginning of meetings, just like we used to at the precinct. But the name carried weight outside the basement, too. Word spread quietly among civilians. "The shades are watching," they whispered. It wasn't fear. It was reassurance. People knew someone was keeping track, even if they couldn't speak out themselves. One evening, as we left a meeting, an Apex officer stood at the end of the block. His golden eyes flickered in the lamplight. He didn't move, didn't interfere. But as we passed, he tapped his chest and bowed his head slightly. Respect. Recognition. It struck me then. Even some of the predators approved that we existed. And maybe, in their own way, they understood. We weren't enemies. We weren't rebels. We were shades, lingering between the past and the present, carrying the memory of justice into the shadows. The shades of blue, ghosts of the badge, watchers in the dark. Chapter 11, listing the missing. We gathered in the basement again, the air thick with dust and silence. Benny brought a stack of notebooks, Ellis carried a folder stuffed with loose papers, and I had my own ledger tucked under my arm. That night, we decided to make it official, to list the missing. Benny stood at the front, chalk in hand, facing the old blackboard that hadn't been used since the hall hosted bingo nights. He wrote the first name in block letters. Miller, James, 5th Avenue, parking fines removed October 12th. The chalk squeaked as he underlined it. Ellis added another. Crosby, Janice, property tax delinquency, removed October 19th. One by one, the names filled the board. Each carried a story, a life, a reason too small to justify vanishing. I read from my notes. Sanchez, Luis, noise complaint, removed October 23rd. The room was silent as the list grew. 20 names, 30, 40, each one a neighbor, a friend, a face we'd seen in grocery stores, school functions, or at church. We didn't embellish, didn't speculate, just facts, name, infraction, date. It felt clinical, but beneath the surface it was grief. Ellis finally spoke. "We're building a cemetery without graves." Benny nodded, his jaw tight. "And we're the only ones keeping it from being forgotten." I stared at the board, the chalk letters glowing faintly under the dim light. The predators had erased these people from the record, but here they lived again, fragile, imperfect, but remembered. As the meeting ended, I lingered, staring at the names. I thought of the predator who had shown me respect, the one who bowed to Mrs. Callahan before guiding her away. Did he know her name was now in our records? Did he care? We left the hall in silence, each of us carrying the weight of the list. Outside, an Apex cruiser rolled past, its hum vibrating through the pavement. For a moment, I wondered again if they knew what we were doing. If they understood that the shades of blue weren't fighting them, but preserving the shadows they left behind. The list was growing, and with it, so was our resolve. Chapter 12, The Predator's Language. We thought we were just keeping lists, names, dates, patrol routes. But the deeper we dug, the more it became clear. This wasn't just about disappearances. It was about silence, about how a society had learned to turn a blind eye and stop asking questions. Ellis played back a recording of the Apex officer's guttural speech. At first it sounded like noise, but the longer we listened, the more it felt deliberate. Not conversation, not orders. Something else. "Command code," she whispered. "Not for us. For them." Benny frowned. Them who? That was the moment it hit me. The predators weren't just enforcing our laws. They were enforcing a system of control that reached beyond us. And we, the citizens, the shades of blue, even the government, had accepted it because it worked. Because crime was gone, because order felt good. But order without transparency is obedience, and obedience without choice is captivity. I looked at the list of names on the board, the chalk letters glowing faintly in the dim light. Each one was a reminder that justice had slipped into shadows, that we had traded freedom for calm, accountability for silence. And yet, the predators weren't villains. Some respected us. Some bowed to widows before guiding them away. Some even seemed to carry regret in their golden eyes. They weren't monsters. They were professionals, guardians, wardens. That was the paradox. They did their jobs well. Too well. The shades of blue began to realize we weren't just documenting disappearances. We were documenting a transformation, a society that had chosen safety over liberty, silence over struggle, obedience over chaos. And in that choice, we had revealed something about ourselves. Maybe we didn't want freedom as much as we claimed. Maybe what we wanted was order, even if it came from predators. Chapter 13. The Signal. It started as a hum. Low, steady, almost imperceptible. You didn't notice it at first. Not unless you were listening for it. But once you did, it was everywhere. The Apex cruisers emitted it constantly, a vibration that seeped into the bones of the city. At night, when the streets were quiet, you could feel it in your chest, like the faint thrum of a distant engine. We tested it. Ellis brought a frequency reader. Benny borrowed an old oscilloscope from a university lab. The signal was subsonic, below the range of human hearing, but it registered clearly on the instruments. And here's what unsettled us most. The hum wasn't random. It pulsed in patterns, rhythms, commands. We began to notice its effects. Crowds that once bristled with defiance now dispersed quietly. Arguments fizzled before they could ignite. Even children grew calmer when a cruiser rolled past, their laughter softening into whispers. It wasn't fear. It wasn't respect. It was conditioning. The shades of blue debated what it meant. Benny slammed his fist on the table. This isn't policing, it's programming. They're altering us. Ellis shook her head. Or maybe they're stabilizing us. Maybe this is what we wanted all along, peace without struggle. I sat in silence, listening to the hum echo in my memory. It reminded me of the radio chatter from my patrol days, the constant background noise that kept us connected, kept us moving. But this wasn't connection. This was compliance. And yet, I couldn't deny the results. Crime had vanished. Protests were gone. Streets were safe. Parents let their children walk home at night without fear. That was the paradox. The hum wasn't just a signal. It was a mirror, reflecting back the truth about us. We didn't want freedom as much as we claimed. We wanted order. We wanted calm. We wanted someone, or something, to take the burden of choice away. The predators weren't outlaws. They were efficient, professional, some even respectful. But the hum revealed the deeper truth. Justice had become a frequency, and we were tuned to it without question. As I left the meeting that night, the cruiser rolled past, its hum vibrating through the pavement. I felt my shoulders relax, my heartbeat steady. For a moment, I almost welcomed it, and that terrified me more than anything. Chapter 14. The Predator's Nest. The shades of blue had grown bolder. Our lists were longer, our meetings more frequent, and our questions sharper. We weren't rebels, but we were restless. Benny led us to an abandoned precinct on the edge of town. The building was hollowed out, its windows boarded, its walls scarred by time. But inside, beneath the dust and silence, we found something we hadn't expected. Rows of incubation chambers lined the basement. Transparent pods filled with a viscous fluid, each containing a half-formed apex officer. Their scales shimmered faintly under the dim light, their eyes closed but twitching as if dreaming. Ellis whispered, They're not just staffing departments. They're growing more predators. They're multiplying. It was more than enforcement. It was perpetuation. The predators weren't a temporary solution to civic unrest. They were a permanent fixture, designed to outlast us, to inherit the streets long after human memory faded. I pressed my hand against one of the pods. The creature inside stirred, its golden eye flickering open for a moment. It didn't snarl, didn't lunge. It simply looked at me, unformed but aware, as if recognizing something in my touch. Respect, or warning, I couldn't tell. We left the precinct shaken. The shades of blue had thought we were documenting disappearances, recording shadows. But now we understood. We were chronicling a transition. Humanity wasn't just being policed, it was being replaced. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to hate them. The predators did their jobs well. Some even carried dignity, respect, patience. But the nest revealed the truth. They weren't here to serve us. They were here to become us. All the way home, I had that feeling I was being followed. It's an instinct bred into beat cops to always be situationally aware. Yet, no matter how careful and cautious I was, I couldn't spot the tail. Epilogue. The last message. If you're reading this, I am gone. Not retired, not forgotten, removed. Another name on the Shades of Blue's list. I hope there are some members of the Shades left. I don't know where they've taken me. The cruiser's hum still echoes in my chest, steady, calming, almost merciful. I didn't fight. Maybe I couldn't. Maybe I didn't want to. But before the silence closes in, I need you to understand. The predators were never monsters. Some of them respected us, even honored the badge I once carried. They did their jobs with precision, with dignity. And in their way, they kept the peace better than we ever could. That's the paradox. They weren't cruel. They were competent. And that competence was enough to make us surrender freedom for calm, accountability for silence. We thought justice was a trial, a record, a verdict. But justice became a shadow, carried out in whispers and hums, invisible yet absolute. And we accepted it, because it worked, because it was easier. The Shades of Blue tried to remember, tried to keep the names alive. But memory is fragile and silence is strong. So here is my last message. Do not forget us. Do not forget Miller, Crosby, Callahan, Sanchez, or the countless others whose names were erased. Do not forget that freedom is not lost in a roar, but in a hum. And if the predators are the future, then let the past speak through us, the missing, the shades, the ghosts of blue. Because justice without memory is not justice. It is obedience. And obedience, once chosen, becomes forever. Good luck, Officer Daniel Kelly, formerly on the job, now among the missing. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.